In the winter of 1867, a 12-year-old boy walked through the doors of St. Mary's Hospital in Boston, carrying with him what will become the most disturbing medical case of the 19th century. Timothy Caldwell's name would be whispered in medical circles for decades to come, not for his recovery, but for the impossible symptoms that defied every known law of medicine and science. What you're about to hear are the actual documented events from the original hospital records, testimonies that were sealed for over a century due to their controversial nature. This is not a story of medical triumph, but of a mystery so profound that it continues to divide experts to this day. Some call it an unprecedented medical phenomenon. Others believe something far more sinister was at work. By the end of this investigation, you'll have to decide for yourself what really happened to Timothy Caldwell, the boy science couldn't explain. On December 15th, 1867, Boston was in the grip of one of its harshest winters in decades. Snow piled 3 feet high on Beacon Hill, and the gas lamps flickered weakly against the bitter wind that cut through the city streets. It was on this frozen morning that Martha Caldwell arrived at St. Mary's Hospital, carrying her unconscious son Timothy in her arms. Head nurse Eleanor Matthews, a veteran of 15 years who had seen everything from cholera outbreaks to battlefield wounds, would later describe that moment as the most unsettling of her career. Timothy appeared to be sleeping peacefully, but something was fundamentally wrong. His skin had an unusual pallor, almost translucent, and his breathing was so shallow that several nurses had to check multiple times to confirm he was still alive. But it wasn't just his physical appearance that disturbed the staff. There was an overwhelming sense of unease that seemed to radiate from the boy himself. Nurses reported feeling dizzy and nauseous when they approached his bed, and 2 experienced orderlies refused to enter his room after the first day. Dr. William Harrison, the hospital's chief physician, conducted his initial examination with growing confusion. Timothy's pulse was barely detectable, yet his heart was clearly beating. His body temperature registered at an impossible 89 degrees Fahrenheit, far too low for human survival, yet he showed no signs of hypothermia. Most disturbing of all, when Dr. Harrison lifted Timothy's eyelids to check his pupils, he found something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The boy's eyes had completely changed. Color, from the brown his mother described to an unsettling pale blue that seemed to shift and swirl like moving water. Martha Caldwell's story was equally perplexing. She claimed that 3 days earlier, Timothy had simply collapsed while playing in their backyard. He had been a perfectly healthy, energetic child with no history of illness. Yet when she found him, he was exactly as he appeared now, as if he had fallen into some supernatural sleep. She begged the doctors to wake her son, unaware that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. Dr. Harrison assembled his most experienced team to examine Timothy Caldwell, but each test only deepened the mystery. Blood samples revealed something that should have been medically impossible. Timothy's blood had an unusual consistency, almost viscous, and under microscopic examination his red blood cells appeared to be moving in perfect geometric patterns rather than the random distribution seen in normal blood. Even more disturbing, when blood samples were left out for observation, they didn't coagulate or decompose as expected, instead remaining in a preserved state for weeks. The boy's respiratory system presented another impossible puzzle. While his breathing was barely perceptible, measurements showed that his lung capacity had somehow increased by over 40% since his arrival. X-ray technology was primitive in 1867, but the hospital's new radiographic equipment revealed that Timothy's internal organs appeared to be shifting position within his body cavity, moving slowly but measurably from day to day. Nurse Matthews documented the most disturbing observations in her private journal, entries that were only discovered decades later. She wrote about how Timothy's fingernails and hair continued to grow at an accelerated rate, requiring trimming twice daily. His skin began to develop strange markings, intricate patterns that resembled ancient symbols, appearing and disappearing across his arms and chest. Most unsettling of all, several staff members reported hearing Timothy speaking in his sleep, but not in English or any recognizable language. The words seemed to echo strangely, as if coming from somewhere deep within his chest. Temperature readings became increasingly erratic, while Timothy's core body temperature remained dangerously low. Infrared measurements showed intense heat radiating from specific points on his body, creating a pattern that one visiting doctor described as resembling a star chart. These heat signatures would shift throughout the day, following no known medical or scientific pattern. The medical staff began to experience their own unexplained symptoms. Dr. Harrison developed severe headaches that only occurred when he was in Timothy's room. Nurse Matthews started having vivid nightmares about ancient rituals and sacrificial ceremonies. 3 different orderlies reported the same recurring dream of being buried alive in frozen ground. The hospital's administrator, a practical man with no belief in superstition, quietly moved Timothy to an isolated wing after several staff members threatened to quit. What do you think about these impossible symptoms? Have you ever encountered something that science simply couldn't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Word of Timothy Caldwell's condition spread through New England's medical community like wildfire. Within 2 weeks, specialists from Harvard Medical School and Yale University had arrived in Boston, each bringing their own theories and equipment. Dr. Edmund Blackwood from Harvard's Department of Unusual Medical Phenomena was convinced they were witnessing an unprecedented evolutionary leap in human physiology. Professor Margaret Thornfield from Yale's Theological Seminary believed they were confronting something far more ancient and dangerous. The joint investigation revealed findings that challenged everything the medical community thought they knew about human biology. Timothy's brain activity, measured through the primitive electroencephalograph recently imported from Germany, showed patterns never before recorded in medical literature. Instead of the typical random neural firing, his brain waves formed complex mathematical sequences that repeated every 6 hours with perfect precision. Dr. Blackwood conducted a series of experiments that pushed the boundaries of medical ethics. He discovered that Timothy's body was somehow processing nutrients without any apparent food intake. His muscle mass remained constant. His organs continued functioning, yet he had not consumed anything in over 3 weeks. Blood tests revealed the presence of minerals and compounds that didn't exist naturally in the human body, substances that wouldn't be identified by science until the 20th century. Professor Thornfield approached the case from a different angle, researching the history of the Caldwell family and the land where they lived. What she discovered sent shock waves through the investigation. Team, the Caldwell property was located directly above what had once been a Native American burial ground, specifically a site used by the Massachusetts tribe for what they called sky burials, rituals, reserved for children who had died under mysterious circumstances. The investigation took a dark turn when team members began experiencing collective hallucinations. They reported seeing Timothy sitting up in his bed, speaking in that unknown language, his eyes glowing with an inner light. Security guards stationed outside his room claimed to hear multiple voices coming from within, engage in conversations that seemed to span hours, despite Timothy never moving or appearing to wake up. Dr. Harrison documented the most disturbing discovery in his encrypted journal. During one late-night examination, he claimed that Timothy opened his eyes and spoke directly to him in perfect English, saying, "They're coming back through me, doctor. The door is almost open." When Dr. Harrison called for witnesses, Timothy had returned to his comatose state, showing no signs of consciousness. Thank you for staying with us through this investigation. Your dedication to uncovering the truth alongside us means everything. But what we're about to reveal in the next chapters will challenge everything you thought you knew about this case. The darkest secrets are still ahead. The breakthrough in understanding Timothy Caldwell's condition came from an unexpected source. Professor Thornfield's historical research uncovered a series of documents in the Massachusetts Historical Society archives that had been misfiled for decades. These papers, written in 1642 by Reverend Josiah Blackthorne, described an incident remarkably similar to Timothy's case, involving a young Native American boy named Kitchie. According to Reverend Blackthorne's account, Kitchie had been found in a state identical to Timothy's after participating in a ritual meant to commune with ancestral spirits. The tribal elders believed that certain children born during specific celestial alignments could serve as conduits between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. The ritual was designed to allow these children to temporarily house the spirits of deceased tribal members who had urgent messages for the living. However, something had gone catastrophically wrong during Kitchie's ritual. Instead of housing benevolent ancestral spirits, he had become a gateway for something else entirely. The document described entities that the tribal shamans called the Hungry Ones, spirits that had been banished from both the world of the living and the traditional afterlife. These entities sought to use human vessels to re-enter the physical world, but the process was slowly consuming the host from within. Dr. Blackwood initially dismissed Professor Thornfield's findings as superstitious nonsense, but the medical evidence began to align with the historical account in ways that couldn't be coincidence. Timothy's blood work showed the presence of cellular structures that appeared to be consuming his original DNA and replacing it with something else. His brain patterns matched exactly the descriptions of spirit possession found in various tribal documents. The most chilling discovery came when the team compared Timothy's current appearance with photographs taken on his arrival. His facial features had been subtly changing, day by day becoming sharper and more angular. His bone structure was literally reshaping itself, and his skin was developing a texture that one doctor described as more reptilian than human. Martha Caldwell, under intense questioning, finally revealed the family's darkest secret. Timothy had not simply collapsed while playing in the backyard. He had been found in the exact center of a strange, circular depression in the earth, surrounded by stones arranged in a pattern that matched ancient ritual sites. More disturbing still, Martha admitted that Timothy had been sleepwalking for weeks before his collapse, often found standing in the backyard in the middle of the night, staring up at the stars and speaking in whispers to someone only he could see. The investigation team made a final, terrifying discovery. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of tunnels beneath the hospital, tunnels that converged directly under Timothy's room. These passages appear to be ancient, predating the hospital by centuries, and they led to a large underground chamber filled with bones and artifacts that archaeologists would later determine belonged to a previously unknown civilization. On the morning of February 3rd, 1868, exactly 50 days after his arrival, Timothy Caldwell vanished from St. Mary's Hospital. The circumstances of his disappearance defied all logic and security measures. His room was locked from the inside, with 2 guards stationed outside who swore no one had entered or left. The windows were sealed and painted shut, impossible to open from within. Yet Timothy was gone, leaving behind only an impression in the bed sheets and a strange symbol carved into the wooden floor that appeared to be burned rather than cut. Dr. Harrison's final report, sealed in the hospital archives for over a century, described the aftermath of Timothy's disappearance. Within hours of discovering the empty room, every member of the medical team began experiencing severe psychological symptoms. Dr. Blackwood was found catatonic in his hotel room, staring at the wall and repeating mathematical formulas that wouldn't be discovered by mainstream science until the 1940s. Professor Thornfield disappeared entirely, leaving behind only a note. That read, "I've gone to finish what the boys started." The hospital staff reported ongoing supernatural activity for months after Timothy's vanishing. Nurses claimed to see a pale figure walking the corridors at night, always just at the edge of vision. Patients in rooms near where Timothy had stayed complained of nightmares involving ancient rituals and being buried alive. The hospital's death rate inexplicably tripled in the following year, with victims showing symptoms remarkably similar to Timothy's original condition. Martha Caldwell never spoke publicly about her son again. She sold the family property within a week of Timothy's disappearance and moved to California, changing her name and living as a recluse until her death in 1889. Her personal diary, discovered after her death, contained entries describing visits from Timothy, who appeared to her as a grown man despite only weeks passing since his disappearance. She wrote that he told her the ritual had been successful, that the door was now permanently open, and that others like him would soon follow. Investigation into the Caldwell property revealed disturbing evidence that the family had been involved in occult practices for generations. Hidden rooms contained artifacts and documents suggesting that Timothy's condition was not accidental, but a result of a deliberate ritual performed by his own family. The documents indicated that the Caldwells believed they were chosen guardians of an ancient gateway, responsible for maintaining barriers between worlds. The most disturbing legacy of the Timothy Caldwell case lies in the documented pattern of similar incidents that followed. Hospital records from across New England show at least 17 cases of children presenting identical symptoms between 1868 and 1900. Each case ended in the mysterious disappearance of the patient, and each was followed by increased supernatural activity in the surrounding area. Modern paranormal investigators have identified a network of these locations, forming a geometric pattern across the northeastern United States that appears to outline some kind of ritual circle spanning hundreds of miles. Dr. Harrison's encrypted personal notes, finally decoded in 1967, contain his final theory about Timothy Caldwell. He believed that the boy had become something unprecedented in human history, a permanent bridge between worlds that allowed entities to move freely between dimensions. His calculations, amazingly accurate for the 1860s, suggested that Timothy's transformation would continue indefinitely, that he would exist as an ageless guardian of the gateway his family had opened. The case of Timothy Caldwell remains officially unsolved to this day. Medical experts have never been able to explain his impossible symptoms or the circumstances of his disappearance. Paranormal researchers consider it one of the most well-documented cases of supernatural possession in American history. Skeptics argue that the entire incident was either an elaborate hoax or a case of mass hysteria, amplified by primitive medical understanding. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Timothy Caldwell's story is how it continues to unfold. Modern technology has allowed researchers to analyze the original blood samples preserved in the hospital's archives. DNA testing revealed genetic markers that don't match any known human population, past or present. The symbols that appeared on Timothy's skin have been identified as belonging to a written language that predates known human civilization by thousands of years. Seismic monitoring equipment installed near the original Caldwell property in the 1990s detected regular vibrations occurring every 6 hours, matching exactly the pattern of Timothy's brain waves recorded in 1867. Ground-penetrating radar shows that the tunnel network beneath the former hospital site has expanded significantly, creating new chambers and passages that seem to grow a few inches each year. What do you think really happened to Timothy Caldwell? Was he the victim of an unprecedented medical condition, or did his family succeed in opening a doorway that should have remained closed? Have you ever experienced something that challenged your understanding of reality? Share your theories and experiences in the comments below. If this investigation into the unexplained intrigued you, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We dive deep into history's most mysterious cases, bringing you documented evidence and eyewitness accounts that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the world around us. Your next recommended video explores another case that defied scientific explanation: the disappearance of an entire train car and its passengers in 1873. The truth behind these mysteries is waiting to be uncovered, and we need investigators like you to help us find it.